pursuing acting? Because I got to imagine there's some
Yeah.
pushback. I'm going to go be an actor in New York City. Like, it's a pipe dream. What I like about it is you broke the blueprint of like traditional thinking. So what kind of pushback did you receive, and how did you say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go do it because that's what I want to do?
I mean, the pushback I received when I was in the city was that you don't look right. Your nose is too small. Your ears are weird. Your hair is too gray. Right? It's all personal. It's
Yep.
all personal. It's all personal rejection, which is why I think when I got into real estate, I was totally fine with all the rejection that most people are not fine with because they can't handle it. But for me, I was like, no one will ever take an apartment, because or not because of my hair.
Right.
And so those 2 years as an actor were like boot camp for me for, learning about personal rejection and building a thick skin. I mean, you don't know embarrassment until you try to be an actor in New York City.
Yeah. And just the idea of going to be an actor, did you receive any type of outside pushback, not even within the industry, but family, friends saying,
Yeah.
you're going to be an actor in New York, good luck?
Yeah, I mean, I was graduating college, right? I had a good education. I had a very regular upbringing. And then I was like, you know what? Everyone else is getting jobs or going to graduate school or, going to law school or med school and all that stuff. I'm gonna move to the most expensive city in the world without a job. And I'm just going to have, some savings I had from working in construction for the most part as a kid, my summer jobs. And
Yep.
I'm going to see if I can make it work. And I don't know, I just, so everybody kind of gave me pushback. But at the same time, everyone said, okay, well, if you're going to do this, you might as well do it now, right?
Yeah.
Like right when you graduate, you might as well try it. So, a lot of people do, they go travel for a year before they are stuck at a desk for the rest of their life. So for me, it was, I'm going to go to New York and see if I can make this work so that at least I'll know. And if it doesn't work, I will never regret having tried, but I'd rather regret the things I did than the things I never tried. That's a quote that I live by.
That's a good quote, because I think there's like research out there that says that most people on their deathbed say most of them regret what they didn't do, not what they did do. So I love that you live by that. Now, obviously, it didn't work out, right? So the research I've done tells me 2008, you didn't have any money left, you're not an actor anymore, so you got to transition. So how did you like reinvent yourself and restart to figure out what was next when acting failed?
It wasn't a Band-Aid the way, when I look back into my life, I'm like, oh, well, in 2008, that's what I did. I mean, it was a much slower transition. I ran out of money, and I knew that I didn't want to leave New York City because I knew if I left New York City, I'd never come back, right? Yeah. And New York City is an amazing city to be in because you can do anything here. It's the most intellectually curious city in the world. You can walk down the streets, even today, with a mask on, and you can meet 100 people that you never, ever, ever would have met anywhere else. So, like, I had to figure out a way to stay here. And so I got my survival job was not as a bartender or a waiter or doing temp work, but was getting my real estate license for a couple $100 and doing rentals where I lived in Koreatown. And slowly but surely, like, I did my first rental deal and made like $500.
Yeah.
And like, it became a drug, right? Where I was like, whoa. So I met somebody on a street corner. I showed them apartments that weren't mine. They asked me which one they should take and which one they'd feel better in. And I told them the honest truth. Like, I think this one's a better one and a better deal. And I made $500 in a couple hours. Like, I'm going to do this again tomorrow. Yeah. And then I'm going to do it again the next day. Imagine if I made $1,000 from this. And, and my rent was $1,100. So like, I needed $1,500 a month to live. I needed rent plus $400 for like food, right? Like $100 a week. So that was my benchmark. Anything above that I was rich. And so I just slowly started transitioning into real estate sales and rentals because the idea that I could run around all day for free and then possibly make money was much greater in real estate than it was in acting. Because in acting, you're unemployed the entire time. You run around all day for free, and then you work for free. You go and do a free play or a free movie or a free student film for the hopes that one day someone might pay you minimum wage. Like, it's a tough grind. And in real estate, it was the more people I met every day, the better my chances were of making an income so I could pay my bills. And so it was like a year kind of progression for me where I was trying to do both at the same time, and then slowly just switched over where the acting thing didn't make me happy anymore.
Yeah.
And the real estate thing, even though it's a roller coaster, I just fell in love with the idea that I could control whatever I wanted to every day.
Mm-hmm. And so you talked about survival job, right? I think most people, I could say most people that are following me right now, they talk often about having a survival job, being stuck. And they're all looking, like we're all looking, how do we break that? So you talked about how you did. You had a hybrid between real estate and acting. If you could give one person a piece of advice, if they're in this survival job place of getting out to pursue really what gets them going, what advice would you give them?
I would give them, I used to tell people that you just have to jump in, right? You just have to jump in the water and swim. And it's really the only way you can do it. So if you're stuck with a survival job and it's what you hate doing, then screw it, quit, right? The only way you're ever going to do something is if you just do it.
Yeah.
But that's not true for everybody. And I think for 10 years, I spit that message out at everybody. And I think that works well for me, and maybe it works well for you, and maybe it works well for half the population. But for the other half, if you're not comfortable doing that, you don't have to do it that way. You have to, it's okay to get your feet wet, right? It's okay to say, listen, I hate working at Macy's, right? I hate working at a store doing retail, selling perfume. I love real estate, for example, right? It could be anything. I love real estate. I love sales. I'd always love to do it, but I can't afford to just rip the Band-Aid off and jump. But I'm going to work all day, and then at night, I'm going to take the classes needed to get my license. And then on the weekends, I'm going to take, we have a sales course, right? We have a large sales course that people can get on our website, ryanserhant.com, where they can learn how to sell and build a sales career. And I'm going to do that on the weekend so I can get ready. And then I'm going to save some money. And then by January 1st, I'm going to make that jump. That's okay too. As long as you start the process, start the process. Don't make it just like this idea.
Right, exactly. I love it. Do something, have a plan for it, and then just attack it. So one of the other cool things is when you did transition out of acting, you transitioned to real estate, probably what most would say is the worst time, right? Subprime mortgage crisis, the Great Recession, what a mess. So
worst time ever. Worst time ever.
Worst time ever worked out perfect. So I want to ask you a little bit about people that are transitioning now, right? You got COVID-19, people graduating college, people that are unemployed. What is some advice you have to people that are transitioning in a time of just mayhem and how to make it a positive transition?
Yeah, now is the absolute best time to make any transition because the whole world is transitioning. I honestly think the hardest time to get into any new business is when everything's awesome. Because you're going in and competing with people who are just crushing it, right? Yeah. Everything's great. Now, all of a sudden, you're the new fish and you're the one who's floundering, and now you got to catch up and keep up. Like everyone, you see what happens to those fish, right? All the other fish are going down the river, racing, and you're the new one, and you're like, I don't know. And you can get lost, right? You can get lost in the river that way. But when the river's dammed and all the fish are like, holy shit, what's going on? I don't understand. You jump into that pile, now you blend in. Now you're like, oh, wow, this is crazy. But at least it's crazy for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, now is the time to start a new business. Now is the time to switch your job. Now is the time to do all that because it doesn't get worse than a freaking pandemic. And it's 2020, right? It's the start of a new decade. Like, why not? This is your, and don't focus on 2020 or 2021. Like, everything I do today is for myself in 2030.
Yeah.
Like, that's in 2000, I got into real estate in 2008. And I slowly made the transition to doing it full-time in 2009. And I distinctly remember having a conversation with my brain in 2010 saying, okay, now I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do this. This is my career. I cannot believe I'm going to be a professional realtor. This is insane to me. Like literally the furthest thing from my idea that I ever thought I was going to do. But everything that I do today, I'm doing it for me in 2020. I better have a great life in 2020. Otherwise, this grind is going to suck. So now, 10 years later, everything I do today, I'm setting up for myself in 2030. Like, that's my vision board. I write 2030 on everything now. I put it in my notes. Like, hey, are you on your way to 2030 yet? Like, what's 2030 Ryan going to do? Would 2030 Ryan go back in time and kick your ass today for sleeping in? Like, 2030, that's what it's about.
I love that. And I love when you mentioned it earlier. Like, something over nothing is something. Like, just do something, make something. But that kind of goes back to your first year in real estate. Something over nothing wasn't much. From what I read, in your first year, you make this massive transition. You only make $9,000. So I got to ask.
Yeah, thanks.
Transition. Well, we'll pump your tires in just a minute because what you've done is incredible. But you make $9,000. How do you keep going? How do you say to yourself, you know what? I know I'm on the right path, even though the monetization isn't there yet. How do I keep pushing through?
Honestly, I had no other choice. You know, I didn't have any other opportunity. So it was keep trying to make this thing work or move home. Yeah. That's why we talk about all the time. Like you got to find your wall. Like for me, my back was up against a financial wall, and it was, I got to make this work or I'm going to run out of money, right? Yeah. Or I'm going to quit and fail. And I will never live that down for the rest of my life. That I went to New York for a couple of years, couldn't hack it, and had to move home. Like that was not okay with me. And so I had to figure out how to pay my rent. And I had to get creative with it as much as I possibly could. And I wasn't thinking about the millions of dollars or the career. I was just thinking about like this year, one at a time. You know, how am I going to make this year work so I can get myself to the next, so I can get myself to 2020. And I think people have to do the same. You got to figure out what your wall is. What are you fighting for every day? Is it your kids? Is it your student debt bills? Is it, you know, I don't know, is it the same thing? Is it your rent payment? Or are you a bit more materialistic? Maybe you got to reward yourself. You know, there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, everything's fine, but I really want that Tesla. So fuck it. Like, I'm not one to sit here and say, no, you shouldn't buy yourself nice things. Print out a photo of that Tesla and put it in front of everything you do. So you know you're working hard to save up money to go and get that damn car. And if that's going to be your wall, make that your wall, so that if you're like me and you make $9,000 a year, you know that's not okay. And next year you got to figure it out. You know? But I was also like, I knew that my first year in the business, I was also trying to act at the same time. I was hand modeling. I was like, you know, passing out flyers for the gym. It's the same, like I was doing a lot of different things. Yeah. And so I knew for my next year, I was just going to go in full throttle. And that's what I did.
Yeah. And so, you know, you talk a lot about like finding your motivation, and then you talk a lot about working harder. But, you know, what I see what you did in 4 years, 2008 to 2012, right? So you go from making the 9,000 to then, you know, becoming a star, $1 million listing, and then being the number 15 real estate agent in New York City, growing to have a team that's number one. It's unbelievable. But I think about it, I'm like, not only can you work harder in 4 years, you have to be more strategic and you have to be working smarter. And if you do agree with that, what are some of the things you think you did in those 4 years that like really differentiated you amongst your peers and in the industry and really got you to where you are?
Yeah, good question. I'd say the first thing that I noticed from people around me who are entrepreneurs or just general salespeople, 1099s kind of contractors, right? Yep. Was that they ran around with their head cut off like a chicken all the time. Yeah. They were always so busy, so many things going on. And at the end of the week, they'd have really nothing to show for it. You know, maybe they did a deal or two, but they were never moving up. They were always just moving forward. And that's okay, right? Because it gets you somewhere better than where you are today. But you got to move in a trajectory that's like this instead of just flat, right? You got to move up. You got to go up all the time. And so, you know, I looked at it, I was like, well, why are these people, how come they're not moving up? How come they're not kind of, you know, structuring themselves in some way? And that was literally it. They had no structure, no discipline, because when you're an entrepreneur or you're working for yourself, by yourself, you don't report to anybody. And we're all kind of creatures of habit, right? I think most of us were lucky enough to have one or two parents or a parental figure kind of tell us what to do. And then we go to school and we have someone else tell us what to do. And then we get our first job and you get someone else tell you what to do. Now all of a sudden you work by yourself and you're like, yeah, I love it, dude. I've always wanted to work by myself and be my own boss. How do I tell myself what to do? Damn it, this sucks. Like, it's much harder than you think. And so I set up a system called Finder, Keeper, Doer, where I knew, like, the one thing I could control, no matter what. I can't control what buyers do, sellers do, what that guy on the street does. I can't control what people say, think about me. I can control what I do from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. So I'm going to structure my day so I can always move forward and up at the same time. And I broke my days down in my calendar, literally, like in my phone. into 3, and I'd have a couple hour block called finder, a couple hour block called keeper, and a couple hour block called doer. And I still do it to this day, 12 years later. And I credit it with everything for me because it gave me total structure and really disciplined me. So I knew no matter what was happening, whether I had appointments today or not, whether I was filming today or not, I know that from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., those are my finder hours, which are really my CEO hours. Like, I'm forcing myself to sit there. I'm not going to do anything else other than brainstorm new ideas for my business. How am I going to market that thing? How am I going to meet new people right now? What else would I do with my CEO hat? Then from like 11 to 12 or 11 to 1, whatever the schedule might be that day, it's my keeper time. So that's my CFO time. That's when I'm thinking about the money, the advertising, okay, when I was in my finder time, I decided that I was going to go after this type of clientele with this target market. Now in my keeper time, I figure out how I'm going to pay for it. Because I just came out with all these ideas. Now how the hell am I going to do this? Right. So I got to go partner with a mortgage banker, and we're going to do it together. I think that's good. Here are the 5 mortgage bankers I want to do that with. I come up with advertising things, all that stuff. The rest of my day, I'm then a doer. So I'm the COO. I'm the one doing all the work. So that's when I'm calling the mortgage banker and saying, hey, I got this great idea. We're going to go after dads who like soccer in West Chelsea. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And so I did that. And, every day is a little bit different. Sometimes I have appointments in the morning, right? Business clients always come first, but I always make sure every day that I find time to be a finder, a keeper, and a doer. And it keeps structure and discipline to my life. That always keeps me moving forward because it keeps me accountable to my own goals. And I don't know, it's just always worked for me. I think that's a big thing that I did that I still don't see anybody do, even though I talk about it all the time.
We talked about like working harder. I think that is a system that I've never heard of before. That's so genius, right? So it's strategic, it's working smarter, time blocking, all stuff that is so important. But when you talk about exceeding expectations, your demographic of client obviously is very affluent, right? So these are people that usually have their expectations always exceeded. So what do you do every day to exceed the expectations of your clientele, a clientele that has pretty high expectations?
Follow up, follow through, and follow back. It's like my 3 F's are, I follow up with everybody until the day that they die. And when they die, I'm going to go to their funeral. I'm going to follow up with their entire family because it's very sad. Right. So I follow up with everybody all the time. I follow through with everything I say I'm going to do, no matter what. If I tell you I'm going to send you an email by 6 p.m., I send it to you by 5:58. If I tell myself I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym, I don't snooze. I wake up. I go to the gym because that's what I told myself I was going to do. Right. You follow through with what you say you're going to do with other people and with yourself without fail. Like, you have to be accountable to your word. Otherwise, everything you say is meaningless, right? And then I follow back with everybody. I go back to everybody. I touch base with people all the time. I've got like my 3-5 rule, which has been big for my team and I during COVID, during the quarantine, because my entire team is like, well, how do I can't network from my couch. What do I do? What do I do? Like, well, yeah, you can. Go back to everybody you ever met and talked to ever. Pick 15 of them every day, and you're going to send 5 texts, 5 emails, or 5 calls. You're going to do 5 DMs, 5 texts, and 5 handwritten letters. Whatever you want to do every day, just 5, 5, and 5 to people that you otherwise never would have spoken to, and you'll create business that way. And all you're going to do is ask people, hey, how you doing? Just checking in, been a while. So if it was an attorney you did a deal with 2 years ago, Joe, the attorney, send him a text message, right? Or give him a call, leave a voicemail. Not everyone's going to respond, but you will get business from just doing it. It's all you have to do is just reach out to people and say, hey, how you doing? It's like the greatest business pickup line in the history of the world. And it's done amazing things for my team and I over the last 3 months. But follow up, follow through, follow back. And the 3 5s every day are like, that's our, more than anything, that's our secret sauce. More than client gifts, more than dinners, more than schmoozing, anything. It's like, stick to your word, do what you say you're going to do, and touch base with everybody and just give. Business will come.
I love that. And I even heard that, like, handwritten letters, some of these small things that people aren't doing anymore go such a long way. I heard one story of a guy who did a handwritten letter to Tom Hanks. And if you actually write him a letter, handwritten, his likelihood of responding is much higher, and he did respond. So those are the things that people just aren't doing, that if you do it consistently, like you said, you're going to nail it. One thing I want to ask, we only have about 5 minutes or so, but you usually have people that work for you take improv classes, right? So I wanted to ask you a little, like, why do you do that?
Yeah. Because you don't know yourself until you've pretended to be a dog giving birth to a chicken on Mars on fire in front of 20 strangers. If you can't do that comfortably, then how on earth are you going to go up to someone on the street, tap them on the shoulder, and start talking to them about real estate without being afraid? Mm-hmm. You know, your ability to say, hi, how are you, is like, that's it in sales. Whether you're selling yourself, selling a product, selling houses, whatever, you have to be able to start random conversations with random people and find something in common so that you can make friends, because people hate being sold, but they love shopping with friends. And that's for any product. If you sell insurance, or if you sell, if you're selling Bloomberg terminals, like everyone who's listening to this right now is some sort of salesperson in some way. Even if you're in school, right? You're selling a higher grade for yourself to your professor than everybody else around you. And how are you going to do that, right? It's all the same tools, and so it's all the same strategies. So, hold on, some guy just walked by with the weirdest dog ever. I don't know if we can. I'm in Chelsea. That totally just took my train of thought. Wait, what was I talking about? Sorry.
So we're talking about selling improv.
Sorry. Yeah. The dog was wearing like a tuxedo. It was like a whole. I'm in Chelsea right now. It's a whole thing.
Sign him to the agency, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's the dog had a mask on. These, like you see in New York, these dogs, everyone's putting like these masks on their animals. Anyway, so I have my team members take improv so that they'll be comfortable with meeting strangers, because that's the job, right? Yeah. No one on my team will ever come to me and say I have nothing to do, because my answer is always go outside and meet people. Now it's a little bit trickier given the circumstances, but it'll get better and it'll become different. And so, and it works well, right? It's really uncomfortable for most people, but then you see it, like they stand taller, right? They feel better. They're more excited when they then walk outside and talk to strangers. They're better on the phone. Right. Improv teaches you the power of, yes and so, even for deal making, your ability to say yes and let me figure it out, right? That's what your job is to always say, okay, I got it, I understand, I'm going to go figure it out, I'll get right back to you. And there's always a way, always.
I love the glass half full approach, almost with everything. Like, you're like, we're in quarantine, here's a positive. Yeah. Oh, we can't meet people for happy hour? Guess what? They're more available now to network with. So I love that attitude. And one thing is, like, Ryan, you've accomplished so much, but you've managed such a balanced life, it seems like, with your wife and your kid. For people out there that are working and grinding but can't seem to figure out how to manage a balanced life, what advice do you have?
Synergy all day long. I don't look at it as work-life balance. Like that stresses me out. It almost, like, in my mind, when people say work-life balance, I think of a seesaw, and I see like my wife and baby on one side and then like my job on the other. I'm like trying to balance it out, and that sounds really, really, really stressful. So I involve both together. I BCC my wife on emails during the day so that when I get home, she doesn't have to say what happened today. She's like, wow, that deal, crazy. Or like, yeah, I saw that email. That guy's such a dick. And I'm like, I know, So like we'll be, in sync that way. And, pre-COVID, obviously, even if it's just a small client drink, I invite Emilia all the time. Sometimes she doesn't want to go, but if she wants to come, it's better. And she makes me better and makes me look better all the time. So I definitely use her. And the baby too. Like, hey, instead of just doing a client thing or another, let's get our kids together. Now that I have a kid, like, I've waited 12 years to be able to say, let's get our kids together. It's a whole thing now. And I, even like I'm in the car all day long. This is Yuri. Yuri, say hi.
Hello. Hey, Yuri. How's it going, man?
Yuri says hi. I'm in the back of the car all day long. You know, if I have 10 extra minutes and I'm going down the west side, I'll call Emilia and say, hey, where are you guys? I've got, yeah. Yuri's like, you don't have 10 minutes. I got 3 extra minutes. Where are you guys? You know, and we'll pull over and I'll see the baby for 2 seconds and I'll leave. Just, it's synergy. It's finding time to blend both sides so that there is no work-life balance. Like that, it's just life. I know it sounds crazy and it always sounds cliche, but it's true if you can put it into practice.
I honestly don't even think that sounds cliche. I think that's a practical idea of saying, hey, we're a team. The idea of BCCing your wife on something because she is part of you. She is what makes you who you are. You go back to the dinner table, you can talk about these things. It all makes sense. One thing Caitlin and I do really well is we always wake up and we have what's called the power hour. We have a cup of coffee. We talk about what's going on in each other's business and how we can help because we have such different, you know, I'm more operational finance focused. She's more creative.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But that being said, we wrap up the Real Talks with a quick restart rapid fire. So it's a this or that. I'm going to do 6 and a quick this or that. Then I want to tell people where, you know, they can find you, what you got going on. We'll wrap, and we really appreciate your time. I know how time crunch it is.
Sure.
All right, so restart rapid fire, this or that. First one, here we go. Open house or private showings?
Private showings.
Okay. Staged house or unstaged house?
Staged.
All day, yeah? All right, new developed building or a landmark building?
New.
Okay. Text guy or call guy?
Text.
Text. I like that. I think email just has to go. It takes too long. Yeah. All right. I know you wrote one book. You got another one coming. Paperback book or are you an ebook?
I like paperback. I like holding it.
Okay. And then you can plead the 5th here, but Steve Gold or Frederick Ickland?
Frederick doesn't live in New York anymore, so I got to stick with my New Yorkers, you know. Steve Gold is here in New York with me, grinding it out during all this stuff. Freddie escaped to LA for the sun and something or other, so yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. Well, we appreciate your time, Ryan. You know, where can everyone find you? What do you have going on? And
listen, you can follow me here on the gram, or you can go to ryanserhant.com and take a look at the course. Anybody in here who's into real estate and wants to learn how to build a sales career, it's the #1 selling sales course for the last 9 months, I guess, which is just nutso. And my second book is Big Money Energy, and you can pre-order it at bigmoneyenergy.com. And thanks for having me. I have to go show an apartment right now, and they're like sitting across the street. They recognize the car, and they're like, "What's he doing in there?" So I'm going to run, but I'll talk to you later.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Take care.
Bye.
All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Real Talk with Ryan Serhant. Hope you guys enjoyed it. His story is absolutely incredible. You know, time obviously is precious. So if you have more time to look at what he's done and how he's done it, it's really remarkable. 2006, went to be an actor in New York City. 2008, made a total restart, detour into real estate, and has absolutely crushed it since. So I think the idea is maybe there's some takeaways that he provided that you can, you know, input into what you're doing. Maybe real estate could be a fit for you. It just takes a few $100 to get a license. He clearly has a course. So the idea here is hopefully there was something. If there's one thing from that session that you could take away and apply to your personal life, professional life, impact on your financial life, then this talk was a win. So thank you so much for joining me, and stay tuned. We have another really exciting guest coming probably next week. So after the holiday, more to come. Have a good holiday, and we'll see you guys soon.